Okay, so we are all here, and it is, what's the official time? 7:04. So I'll call the Wilton Board of Education July 23rd special meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda? All the board members?
Yes.
Yes.
A motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Colleen. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Mandy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Lucille, are there comments from the public?
Yes, there are.
Okay, as I say to everybody's public comment, we will listen, take things seriously, but the board does not interact during the public comment. All right, so Lucille, can we hear it?
Yep, I have one public comment. Hello, my name is Marie DeMasi, and I live at 135 Mountain Road in Wilton. I have 3 children, and while I know the safest decision is to distance learn, this will not benefit their mental health. I am also concerned with the idea of opening and closing. This lack of consistency will not benefit any child. I do hope we can make some hybrid kids go 2 days, distance learn, deep clean day, then other group goes 2 days. I know the state does not agree, and I know this year will need some flexibility.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
No, nothing in the subject line labeled as public comment. We do
Okay.
get SUC a question, but not comments.
Okay, thank you. The consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
All right, thanks, Gretchen. Second from the favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry,
All
no.
right. All right, thank you. Okay, good. Passed. All right, we'll dive right into the heart of the meeting then. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, but I just want to tell everyone, if it's not already completely obvious, is that we are in the thick of it in the planning for reopening. These are very intense and busy and sometimes challenging times. We will hear updates and we'll hear a lot more details, but there are also a lot of details still to come. So I do want to thank the staff for all your hard work, and I know it's going to continue. I'd also like to thank the parents and the community who have either attended virtually or have sent us emails. Please know that we read each and every one of them and take them seriously, and your input is valuable to us. There's a lot to discuss tonight. I also want to be cognizant that, as I said, the staff has been working so hard that I think that I would like to end no later than 9 o'clock tonight. And even that might be, but I think we need to do our best. We could sit here and talk for hours about these topics, but we just are not going to be able to do that. Dive in and the first update, or the update, you're in charge of that, and I know you have several people you want to have speak, but if you could explain the outline for tonight. Kevin, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Kevin,
How many is it going to take to master that? So first, thanks everybody, again, for your participation, your engagement, and your thoughtful feedback as we've been moving through this process. We're still a long way from finalizing plans, and that's really important for everyone on the call tonight and everyone in the community to understand. So just to rewind a bit, when we first started back in April, May, really thinking about reopening, you'll be reminded that we formed 9 goals and 9 goal committees, and each one of those committees was tasked with a particular facet of reopening. And so tonight we're going to hear from Fran Kompar and Karen Brennicke and Trudy Denton, who are going to update you on our progress around curriculum and instruction. I also just remind you, and I'm going to be repeating this, as we kind of move through various facets of the pieces of the plan tonight. The state directed us to submit to them due tomorrow, as you know, 3 plans. One plan is to have all students back full time. The second plan is a hybrid where some students would be in, some students would be learning remotely. And then the third plan is to have all students learning remotely. Even prior to the state kind of issuing those directives, locally, we had agreed that we need a model of instruction and education that's going to do a couple of things. Number one, that's going to get us as close as humanly possible to delivering a typical day of school. And I know, typical is off the table, but what I mean by that is a full day of rigorous instruction in all of the curriculum areas to the best extent possible that we can. So that was the first piece. The second piece was, as we've been talking about this, we needed an approach that's going to allow us to move between those 3 models, because we certainly, I think, can reasonably anticipate we're going to have some closures, we're going to have some kids who are going to be in and out, faculty who are going to be in and out. And so we need to be able to manage those variables. So what we're imagining, what we're starting with is kind of a base concept for most grades. And this, this may not pan out for every grade, but what we're thinking about as a base concept is organizing around live instruction. And we certainly heard from all of our families and a lot of our teachers that, that need for live instruction, that need for direct contact between kids and their teachers was critically important to the success of teaching and learning. And so as a model, as a concept, we're building around that. So what we're proposing in very general terms, and as the next week unfolds and the week after that unfolds, we hope to come back to you with some real clear descriptors of what it's going to look like. But at least at 10,000 feet, what we're proposing is a model of instruction where we know we're going to have kids in class. We also know we're going to have some portion of our student body at home. And so we're trying to set up a system that enables those students to be assigned to classes and to participate in the live instruction remotely. And so using Schoology as the foundational learning management system will get us a long way. We're also exploring different tools and techniques for how we can live video stream our classrooms, and as well thinking about the instructional model and really thinking carefully about what are those facets of instruction where you really need to be, have the teacher kind of on doing direct instruction. What are those other pieces that can be done either independently or interdependently that you may not need a camera on. So a lot of organizational details and a lot of thinking going into that work, but that's the general model. So we'll come back at a later time and really dig into that more deeply, as well as, some other considerations that we have about, whether or not that might be best for our youngest learners. So I just wanted to kind of paint the picture instructionally. Fran and Karen and Trudy will kind of walk us through, what the staff have been up to in terms of building out those models and the curriculum. And then I asked Maria to take some time tonight to talk about, where we are with our staffing, because that's another area that's really, we haven't talked a lot about yet in this forum. But there are many, many questions with staff members' ability to return to work, and then how we're going to manage those folks who might be eligible for remote work, et cetera. And then, because beyond that, what our needs and how we might attempt to manage some of our substitute needs. So those are the 2 big pieces. And then the third piece that's under discuss and approve is the plan that I'm proposing to submit to the state tomorrow. So I'm going to take some time and I'll walk you through that and some of those high level details we talked about a week ago. So you'll just have to bear with me because I'm going to walk through those again, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty of the plan. Sound like and then we have to address the calendar. Okie dokie.
Kevin, question.
Kevin,
How much do you think the state is going to change? Like, are you getting dates from the state of we're going to get more updates on this date, on this date? Like, what are you hearing from the state as far as updates?
Interestingly, I just tonight before we started, I got a document from the commissioner's office that was guidance on remote learning. It wasn't very helpful, but we have it, and they've been, I think, pretty consistent in issuing documents. Some of what they put out is more germane and material to the big rocks we're trying to roll up the mountain. Others less so. I am told that guidance will continue to be forthcoming. There are some big questions that, we've put back in front of the commissioner around, these models and the efficacy of starting, with everybody in person at every level. As all of you know, I've shared, and you're going to hear me say it again tonight, I have a lot of concerns about bringing the high school back full time, just with respect to our ability to faithfully implement all of those mitigation strategies. So we've shared those concerns with the commissioner and his officers at the State Department. I continue to interact with superintendents around the state and send that message. And we don't really have any different response at this point, except the insistence that we be prepared to open full time for everybody.
Yeah. Kevin, can you clarify for me? Yeah, I read came out from the state a few days ago, that days where we're distant learning will not count toward the 180 days of the school year. I'm very confused by this. And they're saying that they want that as part of the second, as one of the plans that we're going to submit. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
If you're asking me to interpret that, I'm with you. It's not a helpful piece of guidance. The best I can tell you is, per state statute, we're required to deliver 180 now.
Right. But they're saying that if you're distance learning, those don't count toward the 180 days.
I can't speak to that. And I can't speak to, what distance learning is looking like in, districts across the state here. For what we're proposing is distance learning will be, akin to what's happening, live in the classroom. We're trying to make it as equitable as possible for kids who are unable to participate. So I don't have any other additional information to share on that.
Okay, because I read that and I thought, well, wait a minute. How can you do that when you're telling us you want that as part of one of the plans we're going to submit to you?
Right.
All right. Okay.
Great. All right, Fran, are you ready? Are you able to share your screen?
Yes. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to provide this update. What I'm doing with my co-presenters, Trudy Denton and Karen Brennicke, is presenting on our update to goals number 2, 3, and 4, which are our learning management system, curriculum, and assessment. And on behalf of Chuck Smith and Karen and Trudy and myself, I'd like to really thank first all the countless teachers and administrators that have been engaged in a tremendous amount of work in preparing for the start of the school year as part of these committees and as part of the curriculum work that's going on right now.
Hey, Fran, just so you know, you're in presenter view. I don't know if that's the view you want to be in. You're not in slide view.
I'm going to stop it right now then. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So I wasn't even reading off my notes, as you can tell. All right, so I'm going to go on to our next slide. So for this presentation, I think it's really very appropriate that we start once again with our mission and vision for Wilton Public Schools. And as we reopen our schools, we're informed by the mission to create a rigorous, learner-centered curriculum within a context that fosters health and wellness. Very, very appropriate for this time. This vision and mission guides us as we are either providing instruction to students accessing learning remotely or in person. The reentry committees that I spoke about, goals 2, 3, and 4, which address learning management system, instruction, and assessment, are all very much connected. We began our work with the adoption and implementation of Schoology, as you all know, and we have reported on. Our LMS system anchors our delivery of instruction and assessment within a consistent organizational structure, which is very important, as we hope that our students are able to go into Schoology and have a very consistent experience that will not be a barrier to their learning. We are also integrating the ability to use a variety of digital tools integrated right within the platform so that there are less clicks and it's easier for students to access all of the tools that they need. And we are adding Zoom, which is the platform we've been using as our video conferencing tool, to Schoology, so that it is going to be accessible right within that system. Our update will also focus on all of the work that's happening throughout the district on curriculum and our plan for blended learning as this instructional model. So as I said, our learning management system has been the anchor of all our work as we're anticipating for multiple scenarios. This will be in person, remote, and it may go to hybrid as well. As we begin our school year, some of the students will be learning remotely right from day one, and we need to plan for that, as well as the students that we will have in front of us. We could anticipate intermittent closures that will bring us all online, or potentially with some model of hybrid. What's been very, very important and very clear to me is that whatever system we use has to be adaptable and flexible. We need to be able to actually go right within one model to another without a lot of issues with that change. So Schoology will house our curriculum units, and we'll have access to digital resources, but we'll also have assignments, assessments, and discussions. Much of what will be done online, as an example, discussions, will also be happening in the classroom. We've provided curriculum teams with a consistent structure to actually start with a template as they're creating their units and their content. And they have been getting support on translating the lesson design elements into that digital version, which would be using the right type of medium for the learning targets that are being addressed.
So our work began in planning for this year, as it always has, with the standards. We approach student learning by identifying those outcomes that are based on high leverage standards. In other words, we really take a look at what students need to be successful in the next grade or in the next course. In the course of our work with students, we monitor progress towards those learning objectives through in-classroom assessments, formatively, and others. We provide support for students who've not yet mastered standards, and we provide opportunities for extension for those students who are ready. Across the district, we will begin the year with what we're calling re-entry units. These units may vary in length from grade to grade and across content areas. The goals of the units, however, remain the same. The units will provide teachers with information about student learning from last year. They will provide opportunities for teachers and students to learn how to engage in the Schoology learning management system, and they will allow teachers to set up instructional routines that will be utilized in person, in hybrid, or in distance learning structures. The structures will also be set up to provide ongoing opportunities to connect with students in order to address social and emotional needs. The key to all of this work is, just as with the reentry units and throughout the year, we will align our lesson components with the instructional methods that are best suited for that setting. So we look at how to replicate things like discourse and collaboration using the discussion tool and Zoom. We look at providing opportunities for students to work independently on practice, on homework, and align those methods to each part of a lesson. As we've learned from parent and student surveys, live instruction is the cornerstone of our blended learning environment. We can achieve live instruction whether we're in person, whether we're in a hybrid mode, or via video conferencing.
Karen, maybe on mute, I believe. No?
So sorry.
That's okay.
Summer brain. The district assessment calendar is being developed with specific intentions. First, it prioritizes and guides the routine use of formative assessments to assist teachers in making the instructional decisions necessary to address gaps in learning, as well as to shepherd students toward mastery of skills and knowledge essential to the grade or course. Additionally, the assessment calendar will serve to identify students in need of support beyond the grade level curriculum. As we prepare for instruction following our extended closure from the spring, we continue to rely on decades of research about effective schools. Schools that are successful in preparing students for college and career develop a guaranteed curriculum with clearly articulated student outcomes. They communicate appropriate, specific, and challenging goals, and they prioritize standards that are the essential learning for a grade or course, so as to teach content deeply rather than cover content broadly.
So we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about supporting that blended learning model. And this graphic is really important because it really illustrates what is actually happening basically in school, and it's all one school. So we are going to be in person, we're going to be remote, and at times also hybrid. So the importance of blended learning instruction is that it's guided by 3 principles. The first is the continuity of learning. So what do we mean by that? So we need to design lessons that are accessible to all learners. With that in mind, we have to think about how are all learners, whether they're in front of us at the time or they're dialing in, so to speak, how are they going to access that instruction? So we may have live video instruction that students are dialing in. There may be discussions. Assessments will be online as well as independent work. So as we talk about that idea of continuity of learning, whether we are one day in person and possibly the following day all online, we should be able to access and not have a interruption of learning, even though our routines will look very, very different than what we've been accustomed to in past years, of course. We will have set up also the second principle, which would be creating a community of learners. And it's really important that that class, whether students are in front of us or they're learning online, feel that connection. And connection is that second principle. The third is the fluidity, that ease from which we can go from in-person to remote and make that transparent to learners and teach them the skills and have them understand how to access the technical support if it's needed, and to have questions answered, to have office hours, for example, posted, and a variety of other ways that we can ensure that learning is fluid and can be accomplished in these very challenging times. So as we look at the types of things that are in process right now, summer projects are multifaceted this year. Unlike other years where they have been very much about the curriculum projects, this year our teams are writing and translating re-entry units and putting them in Schoology. They're writing the first academic units of the year, also for Schoology. We're incorporating new digital tools. I'm working with teams that are looking at things like virtual labs and manipulatives and different ways of, teaching art and photography where it may have been with shared materials in the past, and ways to do that in a way that is going to still meet the needs and the learning targets that we have had in the past. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had project leader trainings to have project leaders prepared. Over 100 of our teachers participated in that. In addition, we have our LLC staff, both our Library Learning Commons staff and technology instructional leaders, embedded within the actual curriculum teams, offering embedded PD and support as they're working. And as I said before, we've had our subcommittees, many people working on organizational structures, working on tutorials, FAQs, many support documents. And on the back end, along with Eric and his team, folks like Lori Ellis, who've been tremendous, and lots of other people, we've been integrating a variety of different applications that our students will be able to access directly from Schoology. Right now, we're up to 42. As we talk about this coming year, I like this quote that we have here, that professional learning has never been more important as schools and districts design and implement in real time new models for learning during and after this pandemic. We feel that this is a huge priority this year, and we're spending a lot of time and focus on our PD. We've completed training on foundational skills for using Schoology for 485 educators. As I said, we've been aligning our digital tools with blended learning and instructional strategies. And as we begin the school year, our calendar shows our commitment to prioritizing Schoology learning and delivering classroom instruction in this new way. In addition, we're working on parent and student modules. So what I wanted to do at this point is really to illustrate with a very short tutorial, well, not tutorial, but a demonstration of what we've been working on and what it actually looks like in Schoology. So this is really in the first phase, and I want you to just kind of think of it as a work in progress, as everything that we're doing is at this point. So I'm in Schoology right now. In my dashboard, I have a number of different courses that I can access. I'm going to look at right now a demo course that I'm going to be using for tonight. As I open it up, and I would as a student have a dashboard of similar number of courses that I could open up and access. I am immediately in the what's called the update section that it defaults to. And the teacher can use this, as I put it here, as sort of like their whiteboard where they're writing their learning targets, maybe reminders, and it's a space in that updates page where the teacher can direct the students to what they want them to do that particular day or week. And I am going to go through this because at this point, I'm just going to go to the materials here. So what I have for you is a couple of different sections. So this is in a sense something that was developed by Eric Mendelson and Michelle Maher and the group at the high school, who've also along with secondary have very similar type of outline. The organizational structure for each of the courses has an introduction to the about the class with information about the teacher, contact information, office hours, etc. In addition, we have class resources and course essential documents, as they're called. In the secondary realm, we would have things like syllabus. We would have important websites. We might have links to textbooks and all the pertinent information that students would need to access throughout the year. In addition, what you'll see here is that there is a particular naming convention that we have established for the entire district, as a matter of fact. So it will look very similar, and students going from class to class will be able to access and find the lessons and the activities for the day, for the week, and easily participate. In this particular example, I can go to Unit 1, Session 2, for example, and I see all of the activities right here. One of the things that I like to talk about is that as students know their technology and learn their technology, there are things that they use in YouTube, for example, like playlists, where I can just hit the play button, and this is an example of what they might see as an assessment. And as they're going through this, you'll see that this is a simple assessment. And, I'm going to go through multiple choice. There, write-ins, short answers, and a variety of different types of things that can be done within that assessment. As I go back to my Unit 1, Session 2, and I hit my next one, you'll see that I can playlist right through my assignments, and I can go from one to the next, which is a really nice feature of this. I also wanted to show you that as we consider what this actually looks like in all of the different schools, it's obviously going to look different if we're looking at Miller Driscoll versus Cider Mill, Middlebrook, and the high school. In the lower grades, the homerooms obviously will have separate subject areas that will look more like a homeroom does. And as we were talking about, we are replicating what the classroom in person looks like in this online version of it. And again, I can go into reading in this particular unit. There's a reentry unit. I have clarity of what the learning targets are for this. And as I go into it, you'll see that, again, I have that playlist that as I'm going through this, and I am a Miller Driscoll student, I not only have more visuals, the type is bigger, but there's actually even a video recording of the lesson. So there are different ways that we're trying to make it so that it is accessible for every learner at every age level. This is one final piece I think I wanted to show you. This is basically what a lesson might look like. In this particular lesson, something that I'm more accustomed to, digital citizenship, you see that there's an essential question, and I have what students will be able to do, and it's very clear right up front what's going to be happening and what the expectations are. So I go into these, you'll notice that, and this is really important for me to explain, if the student is online, I would have the Zoom link right in here for the students to actually click on and access that content. If I am a teacher and I am in the classroom, I would of course be explaining, in this case, what are rings of responsibility. I would perhaps show a slideshow that has the information with the objectives and the content and explain that. If I am in class, I will watch my teacher do this. If I'm at home, I will watch my teacher do this. As I move forward and I go to my next piece of it, you'll notice that at this point I have a discussion. In this discussion, I added a YouTube video, and I would show the YouTube video. And if I'm in class, I may have one of two options. I may discuss with my classmates, but I may also go in and add what my response is right here. As a student at home, I can also add my discussion answer to this as well. So you see that what we're doing right now is we're trying to replicate and not make where the student is a barrier to learning. So essentially, that is really where we are right now. There's a lot of moving parts, as Kevin was talking about, and we will continue with our work in the next few weeks in developing all this curriculum.
Fran, quick question. As a parent, I was really excited when Kevin mentioned live video streaming. You entered the discussion by mentioning live instruction. And then I got a bit deflated going through Schoology and talking about you would click this Zoom. Help me bridge that gap. So is
Sure.
Schoology a addendum to live instruction? Is our goal live instruction and Schoology is helping? I just think
That's
that.
correct. So Schoology is a platform, right? So when you log into Schoology, it in a sense actually provides security for that live instruction. So you access Zoom through Schoology. We're integrating the upgrade to the educational version of Zoom for teachers, and it will be right in Schoology. So students and teachers would be accessing Schoology in order to access Zoom. Zoom would go on and live video instruction would be happening right through Schoology.
Got it. So our goal is still, if we have remote learning, some sort of live instruction.
That's correct.
Make that really clear.
That's correct. Thank you for asking that question.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Fran, I have a question about our Miller Driscoll students. We don't typically give them a Chromebook. Are we offering Chromebooks to families who need them?
Yes, and Eric can speak to it. The purchases and I think some of the Chromebooks, that has been completed. First graders are all going to be getting Chromebooks.
Yes.
And go ahead, Eric.
Yes, we'll have Chromebooks in first and second grade at Miller Driscoll.
Okay, thank you.
Fran, I think part of the reason, Mandy mentioned getting a little discouraged about, when seeing the computer piece So I don't think we can emphasize enough the fact how different online learning will be from last spring. When we did it, certainly in a hurry, with, the best we could, and teachers pulled off miracles in many places. But now the online learning will be much more interactive, as I understand it, will be much more live. We're going to follow the curriculum, I don't know, normal or typical or whatever it is, however you want to put it, curriculum, emphasizing, the leverage standards, et cetera. And so these are tools to help us move from the classroom, or if we have to be home for a day, or, whatever the schedule is. So the video cameras from the classroom, I love it because it keeps the teacher at the center. And so it's like the teacher has the kids in front of him or her, but also has the kids that, are on a computer screen, which isn't like the most ideal, but it's so much better than not having that. And then to be able to see it in real time, I think is just great. And I know that there are all sorts of challenges to getting there, including all the technical stuff. So I guess, Eric, my question would be, do we have the bandwidth? What about cameras? What about sound? What about kids' connections at home? All that sort of stuff to make sure that it's stable enough, unlike my internet connection right now.
Our internet connection inside the district is strong enough and robust enough to support all the technology we have in the district. So we should be in good shape in district. For students that had connectivity issues, we worked with them in the spring, and we will continue to work with students that have connectivity issues in the fall, or staff members with connectivity issues to resolve those. So for devices, we have devices from grade 1 through grade 8 for students if they need devices at home.
And I guess I have a question as well, or maybe a clarifying question. So we talked about this being the system regardless of where we are, and that live kind of instruction being what orientates the model. And I would presume
Is it just me? Because I can't hear.
No, Ruth, we lost you.
We lost you, Ruth.
We lost you, Ruth.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're back.
Better now?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just asking that, where a lot of this is kind of, it's live, and we're also pivoting around the classroom. But if we're all in a completely remote situation, are we still, is the live orientation regardless of whether there's a classroom to pivot around?
Yeah, so I think a way to conceptualize it, and certainly Karen can weigh in here, is as we've been thinking about the instructional model, what are those essential components within a lesson it needs to direct, right? So that's the live piece, and then really trying to leverage the power of Schoology to do a variety of things, to give kids the opportunity to collaborate, to respond, to interact. Schoology also creates a record of all of the learning for kids, so it's a great reflection tool. And so just, it enables us to manage those pieces. But I think, we all understand that, learning happens best when teachers teach, and, teachers are teaching live. So whether, we're all sitting in our dining rooms or in the classroom, it is the key piece, as Fran highlighted, of the model that we're developing here.
So Kevin, can you just confirm that the future of online learning, work will not be optional? Because I know this is something that I've heard multiple times.
Yeah, thanks again, man. You're asking some great questions, and if you don't mind, I'll just take a minute. So, as Debbie referenced, the spring. We learned a great deal, and I refer to, kind of that episode as emergency e-learning, because we were thrust into it, we were home, and we were really building as we were moving along, and our teachers really, were remarkable in the responses. So, from February, March, April moving forward, we've been thinking about how we can refine this and make this better. And so, as I said at the start, we're planning on having school. And so, I'm talking, pretty close, if we're all remote, to full school days, if not full school days. We will be delivering our curriculum. Schoology will be the repository. You saw all of the various organizational features. So a lot of the feedback we got from kids and parents about Google Classroom and the difficulty of navigating, now it's a standard platform across grades, across classrooms. So, some of that goes away. As Fran mentioned, there's a common naming convention. So again, organizationally, that'll be easier. The parent portal into Schoology will enable support for kids, particularly younger kids at home, because parents can also see due dates and activities, if there are live sessions, or when there are live sessions going on, all of those things. So, it just increases the level of support and opportunity we have to really deliver cohesive instruction. So along those same lines, if we are going to be delivering as full a curriculum as we can, then there'll certainly be assessment opportunities and obligations. We will be providing grades and feedback. Students will be required to attend, whether it's virtually or in person. Attendance will be recorded. And so, all of those pieces that are in place in a typical school, we're going to try to put in place in this blended model.
Yeah, I just think it's important. Every 10 minutes, we just say, our goal is live, real time. We're not accepting lower standards, and work is not optional, because Deb mentioned, we read every single email and we keep hearing that theme. So I just think it's important that we keep saying that is our goal.
That's correct.
Right. All right. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Jen.
If we don't have it yet, how do we get our union and all of our teachers behind this thought?
So as Fran demonstrated before, 485 or so of our instructional staff, our teachers, have participated in at least the first round of Schoology. So I would say, folks are coming along. Another additional 100, of that group also trained this summer as curriculum project leads. So, please make no mistake, our teachers are invested. There are concerns, and there are reasonable concerns, because this is brand new. So Maria and I have been meeting with the president of the WEA and his representative, the representative from the CEA, every week. And, we're having really good open conversation. I think, rightfully so, some of us have been completely steeped in this model building for 3 months now. And that's all we're doing is thinking about it. And, we can't say that's true for all of our staff members. So, naturally they're going to have questions. I think, as we're thinking about what and how we prioritize, as we've discussed many times, we start with the health and safety considerations of everybody. And then we move on to, our obligation, our commitment to deliver a really high quality instruction. As we're entertaining that and thinking about all of those various scenarios, whether it's hybrid in person, fully remote, and then the related variables about, kids who may be participating itinerantly because they have an exposure or something, we have to have a model that allows us to move, to account for all of that. And so, I feel very confident that our staff will come along. And, I think not only will they come along, but as, more and more of them look at what we're trying to do and looking at the way we're trying to go about it, they're going to commit their own thinking to it, and we'll probably come up with better ways to do it than what we're thinking about right now. But at the end of the day, our commitment remains the same. It's that we're going to deliver high quality instruction in a full school program.
Kevin, I have a question, perhaps, to Fran and Eric. We are probably not the only community in this country that has adopted Schoology. As a company, are there any concerns about Schoology's ability to support what we're trying to do when every community in the country has gone to them at all?
So yeah, that's an excellent question, Glenn. Many districts have been going with Schoology. Right. You can probably imagine getting a learning management system has been really high on the priority list of just about everyone.
Right.
Schoology and Canvas are the two big top ones. Schoology probably coming up on top. What I feel good about is that PowerSchool is actually the parent company. It has a very, very, wide net in terms of the number of people and support people that it has. Wilton also has purchased the support package that allows us to get essentially 24/7 access to any support person for any of our teachers all week long. So we do have lots of things in place. And, they have thus far, good and responsive. We will be working with them in the next week on doing essentially what's the sync between PowerSchool and Schoology to bring over classes and all of that, and we'll get a better sense of how we're doing at that point. But so far, we've been happy. We've done a lot. I mean, this is the kind of thing that normally takes a good year to implement. And just the idea that this is, where we are right now and how much has already been done is a testament to everybody that's been working on it, as well as the folks at Schoology that have helped us get this far.
Yeah, I went through it the earlier a couple of months ago when you sent out the information on Schoology, and it does seem like a fantastic platform for us to be using, both for parents and students. But I'm just concerned with the entire country going to it. About their ability to continue to support us at the level we need. But if you're saying you were, that was a question. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, I'm going to interrupt and just point out that it is 10 to 8, and I don't know how much more you want to cover in the updates, so I'm just warning you on the time.
Great. We have a lot to cover. I think what I would say, just to wrap up this portion, and I know, Mandy, to you, the questions and the comments you made and everybody else about the instructional pieces, I think, as parents and people are listening at home, I want to just, repeat, we are having school, and it is not going to look like emergency e-learning. And so we're developing tools, we're developing models, as we meet and continue to move forward here in the next set of days and couple of weeks, we'll really come back with, hopefully be able to paint a clearer picture of what that's going to look like, and, really inspire some further confidence in people. But, just know that that's our commitment. That's how we're moving forward. At this point, I want to turn it over to Maria, and she's going to just update us on kind of the faculty survey and some of the challenges, that we're confronting there as we're looking at staffing and how we're continuing to manage there in this environment.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm not sure if I could share my screen. Am I a co-host?
Here, I'm going to change it so panelists can share. So you should be able to share.
Maria, I did make you a co-host.
Okay, great. Okay, can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I wanted to, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to provide an update on the recent staff survey that we administered to all staff across the district that just closed last Friday evening. And it was a very short survey to try to assess whether or not staff members plan to return at this point in the fall based on what they know and based on any concerns that they may have. And so I wanted to just share a breakdown of the information that we have at this point, knowing that the situation is very fluid and people are still in a state of uncertainty as to whether or not they're going to return. There are a number of variables that I'll talk about this evening, but I did want to share this really as one set of data points as we continue our planning for the reopening of school. So as you take a look at this, we had 382 respondents, and most of those were teaching staff. We have just about 400 teachers. And so our response rate was actually very good. When we look at this, we can see that in the light blue, the number of staff that said that they may not be returning, those are classified staff. And then the dark blue are actually certified staff. So those are teachers, school counselors, occupational physical therapists, and so on. And
what's classified?
Classified staff includes secretarial staff, paraprofessionals, our campus supervisors, but the largest group within that is the paraprofessional staff. So these are our classroom aides, often that work with students with special needs or support some of our general classroom needs.
And just to clarify, Maria, these are staff who are saying, I am not returning, or these are staff who are saying, I'm concerned with returning?
So these are staff that are saying they may not return.
And
Okay.
at what date are you going to ask them for a more concrete?
So we're going to be sending out some more information tomorrow to staff just about some different options and some of their legal rights as they relate to requests for accommodations and leaves and things like that. And a week after that, we're going to send another survey. So the week of August 3rd will be our next survey. That will give staff some more time to explore their options, perhaps consult with their families and their physicians, get a little closer to the start of the school year so they have a better sense of what the situation is within the state in terms of infection rates and things like that. And I believe that they'll have a better sense of whether or not they're going to have challenges with returning. So this was, one set of data points to help guide us in our planning, but we know that it's a very fluid situation and this is subject to change. I'm going to share a little bit more information to tell you why I'm not confident that this is really reflective of the actual number of people that may not be returning. I actually think that this over-reports the number of staff members that may not be returning.
Maria, can I ask a question? If I'm reading this correctly,
Sure.
for instance, at the high school, it looks like 32 or perhaps certified staff, teachers, counselors, et cetera, might not return. But what's the total number for the high school?
That is the total number that might not return.
No, the total number of the staff.
Oh, 122.
All right, so I'm reading 32 out of 122 might
Right.
not return.
Yeah.
25%.
So actually, as we look across, Miller Driscoll staff is about a third. It's about 35%, just over a third. And then the other three schools are about 25%, a quarter of the staff.
And Maria, really quickly, so the next survey is August 3rd. So do you think, say, by August 15th, you'll have a clear understanding of exactly who and who is not returning?
I think we'll have a much clearer sense. We're going to stress to people that it will be important for us to know. So we're going to ask them to, let us know by the end of that week. We're just going to keep it open for 1 week. But really, there's never a point at which that closes. A person can decide at the very last minute that he or she may not be returning. So as much as we're going to stress, the urgency of this, we know that there may be people who are really wrestling with the decision. I think that the decision to return for many of our teachers and many of our staff members is a very difficult one. I believe very firmly that our staff members are very committed to their kids. They're very hardworking. They want to be on site, and their reasons for potentially not returning are, reasons related to health concerns or childcare, things like that. And I think they're not things that they take lightly. So I think this is a very difficult decision for many that they're really struggling with. And I've heard already from a number of teachers who've said, I want to be on site. I want to be working directly with our kids. I wish that we could be in a situation like that, and that I could feel comfortable. I'm talking, as if I'm a teacher, that I could be comfortable with my health situation or my spouse's health situation. But I think these are very difficult decisions for a number of our staff members right now. And I think that only through educating them about their rights and educating them about the numerous precautions that we're going to be taking as a school district, can people make a more informed decision about what they're going to do as they return.
Maria, can I just ask a quick question? What does, not return mean? Does that mean a leave of absence? Does that mean a resignation? Like, what does that mean?
It can mean a lot of different things. So, you know, there are staff members that may be requesting accommodations through the Americans with Disabilities Act. And, you know, the requirement for employers to provide accommodations for staff members who have qualifying disabilities is that we provide reasonable accommodations to the extent that those accommodations do not present an undue hardship to the school district, to the employer. And so I would imagine that there may be some staff members that request the accommodation of being able to teach remotely. And it'll be our decision as a school district as to whether or not we have remote work to provide. And if we don't, that may be because the remote work may present an undue hardship to us. Those are things that we're really working through right now as a staffing committee. The other piece is if a staff member does not have the option of remote work, would the staff member have the option of taking a leave of absence? Those leaves of absence are not automatically guaranteed. Those have to be approved by the school district. There's also, you know, there are factors that come into play with leaves of absence, like having to fill the position, having the staff member continue with our benefits plan, which is a cost to the district. So if a person has an unpaid leave of absence, we may not be paying the salary, but we may be paying the benefits if the person is on the benefits plan. So there are a number of factors that go into play. Also, hiring for a person who's on a leave of absence can sometimes be more challenging because we may be hiring for a long-term substitute or a one-year position, and people are less likely to leave their certified, you know, contracts in other districts for short-term positions. So there are a number of factors that go into play with us actually approving those kinds of things. But sure, that's a possibility for some staff members. There are some staff members who may decide to resign or retire. You know, we've already had a few staff members do that. And, you know, they've shared just with me in our conversations that, you know, they'd prefer not to take risks coming into a school site or a work site. You know, they're taking their own precautions even in their own lives at home now, and prefer not to come into a work environment. So there are a number of different possibilities, leave of absence, possibly remote work if it's available, resignation, and some things in between. So
you said these numbers might be over-reporting. Do you want to just explain that for a minute?
Yes, so I'd like to just share the reasons that staff members provided. They weren't actually required to provide reasons, but some did. And we see 38 of the staff members said that their reasons for possibly not returning would be related to childcare. So we had a number of these staff members said things like, well, if schools are open, then it will be fine. But if my child's school or daycare center is not open, that could be problematic. We had 4 staff members say that, you know, they're concerned about their own age or a family member living in the house who may be at a higher risk based on his or her age. One said that the person was concerned about safety in just the workplace related to the virus. 7 said that they had individual medical or a family member that had a medical issue. And then 65 didn't share a reason. They weren't required to. You know, I believe that some of the 65 may have had childcare issues. And I just based that on the fact that we had 78 respondents in our spring survey who said that they would take advantage of childcare if we offered it. So I think childcare is a big factor. And if school districts are open and daycare centers are open, that eliminates at least 1/3 of this pool. And then I think as people learn what their rights and options are, they may decide to come in. And as they learn about all of the different precautions that we're going to be taking as a school district, they may decide that they do feel comfortable coming in. You know, I think there's comfort in things that are certain and known. And I think we can take comfort in the fact that we are going to be wearing masks. You know, we do have very stringent cleaning protocols that we're going to have in place. We're going to require self-monitoring for staff and students. We're going to have a very clear protocol for if a person is exhibiting symptoms of illness. And we saw that, just this past week with, something that arose with our ESY program and our very immediate response with that. So I think as people learn more about how we are going to create a safer environment, they may feel more comfortable and less likely to remain home or request a leave of absence.
Okay, let's hope so. Yeah,
I hope
good.
so, we do.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again, I know people want to come to work. I know I've had the privilege of working with many of our teachers across the district as a teacher myself and an administrator in 3 of the buildings, and I know people really want to come to work. So people who are expressing these concerns are genuinely fearful or have, issues that make them question whether or not they're going to be able to.
Maria, have
So-
you guys had an opportunity to think more about childcare on site?
We have, we've had some conversations with Dolores Tufariello from Wilton Continuing Education. She's the director of Continuing Ed, and she, I think, is very resourceful and very open and is open to hiring additional childcare staff if we need it. I think the biggest barrier at this point will just be space. Right now we're thinking about how we're going to accommodate all of our students, or however many students come to school each day, while also adhering to our social distancing protocols. And so we have to prioritize that before we think about bringing in additional children. But it is something that we're still open to, and Dolores and I have spoken about some strategies for hiring additional childcare staff. She's really ready to work with me on that. And I think it remains something that we're going to consider pursuing. However, looking at the situation statewide and recognizing that schools are projected to open, I think it's going to be less of a need.
Okay.
So I also wanted to just give you a sense of the breakdown of staff members across each school that reported that they may not be able to return to work, just to give you a sense of the potential impact. And I want to be clear that, we made some of the groups larger because in cases where groups were very small, we didn't want to identify the specific staff members that may have said there may be concerns. So there are some groups that, for example, related services that lump together services like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language pathology. Our specials are art, music, PE, library media. Interventionists could include instructional coaches as well. So those are groups that incorporate often a number of different titles, but this gives you a sense across the schools of the different roles that may be impacted if teachers are not able to come to work in mid-August.
Maria, the numbers are each individual teacher or person?
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
2 world language people at the Wilton High School and 5 paraprofessionals.
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, this is a very telling page because I'm concerned. We know that the younger children are not, or I guess that what we think we know, are not susceptible. But I'm really concerned about the number of elementary teachers at both Solder Mill and Miller Driscoll that have said no, that they don't plan on coming back. That's a big hit in those 2 schools.
Yeah, and just to be clear, they've said they may not come back.
Yeah.
That was the way that the survey was phrased, and I think the next survey is going to be more definitive than that. We just
Right.
wanted to try to get a sense from people early on,
Yeah.
but this next one is going to be more, at this point, are you planning on returning or not?
Okay.
And, really creating a sense of urgency for people, knowing that there's still the possibility that, days before school starts, people may make that very difficult personal decision not to return.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions about this slide? Okay. Okay, so I have a happy slide. I'm going to end on a positive note. Okay. So I wanted to share one of the things that we think about is our strategy for trying to support the needs of students and our staffing needs as we, confront the possibility of having staff members not return. I do believe that while this number is probably an over-representation of our actuals, we will have some staff members who aren't going to return in the fall for various reasons. And so we have to think about how we're going to leverage the staffing resources that already exist in our district. And one of the things that we've done is to identify all of the additional certifications held by staff currently in the district. So we have of nearly 400 staff, an additional 250 plus certifications held by our staff members. Of those, about 20 are held by substitute teachers and paraprofessional staff, which I think is just reflective of the very talented people that we have in non-certified roles, or at least roles that don't require certifications. But you can see here, our most common secondary certification is administrative. We have 37 staff members that hold the administrative certification. 34 hold elementary certification as a secondary cert, and 26 have the remedial reading and language arts certification. But then we have smatterings, across many of the other certification areas. And within our substitute teaching pool, it's really quite varied. We have special education, elementary, math, secondary English, and a number of others. So what we're doing now is really trying to identify what we might do if we have last minute vacancies that are not immediately filled. We are in the process of assigning building substitutes to each of the schools. And the way that building substitutes work is that they are assigned daily. So they report to the school site every day, and they are guaranteed work each day in the classrooms. We are ensuring that every building has at least one person with a certification, so that if we needed someone in a certified role, we'd have at least one. The state does not require a person to have certification in the subject area that he or she is teaching until 40 days of continuous instruction. That's not our standard, but if we had an emergency situation and we needed a substitute to fill in, the certification requirement would not come into play until 40 days of continuous teaching. And I want to be clear, a lot of our substitutes are highly accomplished people with, we have one who has a doctorate in chemistry, and people who have had very successful careers in business, former school teachers and administrators. So we have a very accomplished substitute pool that we're continuing to build on a daily basis. We have additional interviews scheduled throughout the rest of the summer. And so we are really focusing on that as an opportunity for us. We're also looking at our cafeteria aides and our Wilton Continuing Ed childcare staff to see if there are opportunities there. And so, we have reason to be, I want to say optimistic, because I think we all need to be optimistic. Certainly, prospect of not having a number of staff members prior to the start of the school year is a scary one, in light of the fact that, people's reasons for not returning are personal and based on the pandemic. And for that reason, I think it may be challenging to find replacements. However, I do know there are many people who have expressed interest in coming to work for our school district. And so we're continuing to pursue those opportunities, and are hopeful that we're going to have a number of new staff members that we can welcome on board for the fall.
Maria, have you considered retirees, recent retirees?
Yes.
Is that a possibility?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. In fact, we're going to be reaching out to our, I think I shared this at a board meeting within the past year or two, that I hold exit interviews every year with anyone who's exiting the district. And when I meet with our retirees, I always try to solicit them to come work for us as substitutes. So we already have a number of our retirees working for us, and we've pulled the list of anyone who is not, and anyone who has not moved out of state, and we're going to be reaching out to them to see if they can come work for us, either as tutors or as substitute teachers. So absolutely, that's something that we're going to be pursuing.
Maria, this is going to sound like a joke, but it's really not. I cannot tell you how many parents I've spoken to who are certified teachers, and they're like, what do I need to do? It's sort of like that, during World War II.
Yes.
Was like, we're ready. What do we need to do? We want to come help. So it's unbelievable how many parents have reached out saying they want to.
I know, and I think that's amazing. I had a parent recently reach out to me who had been a professor, he taught as an adjunct professor and had just really impressive credentials. So, we welcome people to apply online. We have an open position for substitute teachers, and I would welcome anyone who's interested in town to apply for that. We also have other open positions for childcare and things like that. And if a person is just curious about opportunities, please have the person email me, and I'm happy to give anyone a call and talk through the different opportunities that we have. I really think there are ways that we can utilize the incredible talent that we have in the district. And I'm happy to talk through different opportunities with people who are interested.
Okay, thank you. And one more thing we might be able to do, am I right, is that at least at the high school, there might be teaching by section. So if we lost a teacher, especially a part-time teacher, there may be other teachers that might be able to pick up another class. Is that something? Okay.
Yes, that is an option. The high school has probably the most part-time teachers in the district too, where we might have someone that's 80% or 75%. So there's sometimes very easy ways to increase someone's full-time status. And then there are teachers that sometimes take what we call overages, so they can teach an additional course during a free period or things like that. Naturally, those kinds of things have budgetary implications. But if they're taking these overages because someone has left and we haven't refilled those positions, then it's typically budget neutral.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll look forward to the next survey, and again, hopefully these numbers of people contemplating will come way down. So
I hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So I want to just seize on that segue of budgetary implications to talk a little bit about the costs that we're compiling now. So unfortunately,
Kevin, I think we're losing you.
Kevin, we're losing you.
Frozen.
On the next one.
Thought it was me.
Yeah, does he know we can't hear him, Deb, at all?
Yeah. I'll text him. And I know Anne is unable to join us to talk about the budget specifics. So let's give Kevin a couple of minutes to get back on. But I'm looking at the agenda, and as we wait for Kevin, I'm just going to take the prerogative and let's get a couple of businessy things out of the way, if you don't mind. It's kind of like intermission here for a minute. There are some meeting dates, item E3, that are just like traditional meeting dates. So can I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Those are our meeting dates. All right. Thank you, Mandy. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. So we got that out. And I see Kevin. Kevin, are you back?
Back. Sorry about that.
Okay. No worries.
I start to talk about budget implications and my internet runs away scared. So happen again. So my lights are flickering. I don't know what's going on up here in North Wilton tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. So just in a nutshell, I'll top line it for you, and then know that when able to join us, we'll get into the more granular details. But a large chunk of that is really tied to additional staffing. So I think I shared with the board already that in order to meet the Department of Public Health cleaning and sanitizing guidelines, we will need to hire additional custodians. We're looking at about $430,000 in salary to pick up about 7 additional custodians to manage those cleaning requirements. In addition to that, we're going to have additional certified as well as classified FTE needs. And so we have a proposal from the middle school right now for 1.5 certified FTE, and that's to hire an additional world language teacher, as well as to augment the FTE of an additional PE teacher. And the rationale behind those hires is really to better manage our ability to cohort students in classrooms and on teams. And so we can limit the amount of mixing that currently takes place. We're also going to have, additional staffing needs just, in regard to campus supervision, both at the high school and at Middlebrook. We're going to need, because we'll be eating lunches in the classrooms, we'll need supervision for lunches. And then for, other periods during the day in the hallway to help promote social distancing. Have been working with a company to manage and plan for foot traffic flow through the building, as well as all of the necessary signage. We're looking at about $60,000 across the district to manage all of those costs. We're also, as we've talked about before, working on ideas to access the outdoors. And so one of the concepts was to purchase a few tents for each of the schools. Certainly at Middlebrook, we could provide some tents and set them up in the courtyards, so we address all the security concerns. But the tents are about $34,000. We have put together an order for additional PPE and hand sanitizing stations, because we'll have hand sanitizing stations outside all of our school entryways, as well as in every classroom and throughout the building. We're looking at an estimate there of about $122,000. We're also, we're going to need to purchase some furniture. And so we have an estimate right now for, to re-outfit our kindergarten classrooms. If you've been in those classrooms, you'll recall, presently they're outfitted by 3-foot square tables, and under normal circumstances, we'd have 4 kids at those tables. And so now we need to have, standalone desks or tables that are big enough to separate kids by at least 3 feet. So I have an estimate of about $40,000 for additional furniture. We also, there are, all kinds of things we're still trying to factor in. The high school is still working on its sectioning. As we talked about last week, and I'll repeat again later on in the meeting, our room sizes are about 900 square feet. And so, we're limited, we're trying to manage those different social distancing requirements. We're limited to how many students we can have in a classroom. And so at the high school, there are a number of places where we need to create additional sections. And so there's an FTE implication there as well. And then there are other incidentals around the lunch program. And so if we're having lunch in the classrooms, we need to purchase additional garbage cans and things like that. So what I'm imagining is, some expenditures in that range that I just described. Some smaller portion of that we'll need to spend upfront, certainly on the supplies, furniture, et cetera. Other costs like salary will be spread across the year. And then we're working on this strategy to recover some of those costs. So the first strategy is to take advantage of all the reimbursement opportunities we have. Anne had submitted in the last couple of days a reimbursement of $400,000 to FEMA. Of that, if they approve everything, we're eligible for 75% of that back. And so we hopefully will hear very soon. And then we'll move on to the state funds that are available. We're also hoping that, the movement in Washington will financially support districts trying to cover this. We're always back in our budget and really looking to manage purchases and really, again, looking at the what we've planned for, and then just reevaluating, do we need to reprioritize? So I think the final piece is, once we have a clear reconciliation, whatever that gap is, we may need to go back to the Board of Finance and request charter authority to cover whatever's outstanding. And so we'll have a clearer sense of that as we get into probably mid to late September, October. But I'll stop there and just let you know this is expensive. We've got, I think, strategy in place, and when Anne is back, she can take us through all the real significant details.
Kevin, two things. Your Wi-Fi, we heard you all, but your Wi-Fi seems to be slowing down. So you might want to have the number ready to call in case we lose you totally. But if for some crazy reason we're not able to go back to school and we have all these janitors, do we have options if we have no kids actually physically in the school and we've hired all these new janitors?
We would hire them, they would be on, I think, short-term contracts. And so if we didn't need them, then we would lay them off. Is that correct, Maria?
Yeah, so what we would probably look to do is hire them as substitute custodians or short-term custodians. And we have a period of 120 days to keep them on as substitutes before they actually become full-time employees. So that's a good window for us to actually test the model and make some decisions about what our needs are long-term.
And then, Kevin, one of the highlights in the local news was spending $1 million on bus monitors. Can you just re-clarify that that is not our plan?
That is not our plan, right? It's, cost prohibitive to proceed, and I also think unnecessary. So I think what we do have to talk about, and Maria and I have been talking about some ways that we might be able to accomplish this. If we think about, first of all, there's going to be diminished ridership on our buses. We heard very clearly from most parents that they're going to be driving their kids. So that's an important factor to consider. And then, who actually would require bus monitors? By my thinking tonight, our youngest students, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, might require some additional supervision assistance at the very start of the school year, just to help reinforce the routines. But I also think, the principals have been thinking about this, and they're, working on social stories and things like that. So we'll be providing some training videos and that kind of information to parents just to help prepare kids. And then we'll do the same thing in schools. But we're not spending $1 million on bus monitors.
Okay, thank you.
That was not then a state requirement as they originally said, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So in terms of D1, that's the end of that portion of the agenda item. And so the next piece will be E1, reviewing the district plan that's going to be submitted to the state.
Yeah, that's fine. And before we lose you, we should probably take advantage of your screen if you want to take us through that. Some of it we have seen before, and certainly the reopening committee, I think, has seen part of it too. Am I right? That's correct.
So okay. What I'd like to do, you want to start with the cover letter that you prepared?
Yeah, if you have it. I just want to make sure that I'm clear to everybody on the board or listening, is that when we vote tonight, it is not to approve a single model. It is not to approve a particular decision or schedule or anything like that. But we are concerned as a district, hearing Kevin's concerns about some of the challenges presented by the high school in particular. So the state, I think, Glenn, you brought this up, or somebody earlier, the state, also came out with sort of that memo last week that says days that are not, full-time, the model that we want to get to, we will not be able to count, we won't count it for you. So we're going to push back a little bit. I'm going to propose that we push back a little bit, and I want to see the board reactions. But basically, we are approving the descriptions tonight of the 3 different plans, and in Kevin's document, there are multiple details, and he will be able to describe many of them. And then there are some that are still in the works, and that's okay. That is true of all districts. So we will most probably approve the document that he shares with us, but I wanted to propose that we add our own introduction that says that, you know, as we approve this submission to the state, that we are not approving or endorsing the specific scenarios to be implemented in the Wilton Public Schools. So we're not agreeing on a plan. We're not saying, yes, you know, full open is definitely the way we're doing. We are not there yet. We are not ready to make that decision. The second point points out, you know, the different schools in our district. And we want to take the approach that we will take the three scenarios, the hybrid, the full open, and the full close, and decide site by site, school by school, which we feel, the board feels, best matches the student health and safety needs at each individual school. So we want to kind of avoid the one size fits all assumption. We want to be able to break our district down into different schools and say, okay, which scenario makes the most sense at each of those levels based on health and safety needs. And we're doing that because, one, there's more recent medical research that has concluded that there are differences based on the ages of kids as to how susceptible and or to what degree they transmit COVID-19. We also have some facilities, and we'll talk about the high school, Kevin can certainly talk about that, where we have more challenges than others in trying to implement sufficient and effective mitigation strategies. And also, if we do a case or a school by school approach, and perhaps we determine that we can't do a full open immediately for one or more sites, this allows us, it doesn't cut off anything, but it allows us the opportunity to phase in or ramp up as we feel things are working out. So all of this was prompted or started by the concerns about safety for a full open for our older students. The best examples I can give you come just from the high school at this point. There may be, we can talk about other sites, but for now, let's just focus on the high school. For instance, the high school does not support forming cohort groups, and that's a mitigation strategy taken off the table. We try to, as a mitigation strategy, sort of contain students to different portions, certain portions of the building. That is impossible as students at the high school move between classes. They go through the entire building several times a day. At our high school level, as Kevin reported, we have a limit to our class size, but that's with our goal of maintaining 3 feet of social distance, which is different from the more often touted one that we've heard so much about is 6 feet. So that creates a challenge. And our school day is 6.5 hours long, approximately. And of course, it's held mostly indoors. And yes, we can go out and use tents occasionally and all of that, but that's not reliable, dependable, or comprehensive enough. So if we take the research seriously, medical research that concluded that older students, meaning high school kids, are more like adults in their transmission and susceptibility to COVID, that's why we're concerned. So we're not sure that the mitigation strategies we can reasonably employ, we think maybe, we're not sure that they're sufficient. So we think it may be wiser to start slowly at the high school. And notice I'm using words like concerned. We think it may be wiser because we know the data and the thinking can change and evolve. But we want to push back a little bit early on the state and not instantly assume a full open for the entire district because that's what the state wants. If we really want to take health and safety seriously, then I think it makes sense to break our district down by school and look at which scenario fits the best. We haven't made any decisions about that yet, but I am advocating that we have the flexibility to do that. So we're hoping that the State Department of Education will consider it and even support rather than a sort of a one-size-fits-all immediate assumption of what fall will look like. I just want to reiterate, the board has made no decisions at all, but we want the flexibility to break it down site by site, look at each scenario, given the best thinking at the time, which might be 2 weeks from now, and who knows what changes between now and then, that then we determine which scenario makes the most sense. Because we're being guided here, driven, if you will, by health and safety. And I know that we have read many emails from different parents, and their thinking is widespread. There's everything from we shouldn't be doing this at all. We should all be remote all the time, or we should all be on site immediately. So we understand that people have different points of view, and the best we can do as a board is focus on the health and safety information that we have, look at it carefully. I am glad the state asked for 3 different scenarios. And what we're saying as the Board of Education in Wilson, at least I'm proposing that we say this, is that we have the flexibility to look at each school and match the scenario to fit the needs of that building. So there it is. And that would be an introduction and to a larger document that has more of the nitty-gritty details from Kevin and his team. And I think, we're basing this proposal as a board, and we should discuss it, either before or after Kevin gets through the whole document. But listening to the reopening committees, hearing reports from that, talking to Dr. Smith, reading the research, hearing, sort of input from different parents and families, I think we need to get a more flexible approach and look at it building by building. So I'm sorry for being so long-winded, but I wanted to be clear, not making a decision tonight, asking for the flexibility to determine the scenario building by building. Okay.
Great.
And I heard thunder in the background, so I'm not sure that was great, but.
All right. So some of this you have, I shared with you last week. So I'll kind of proceed crisply through the beginning pieces here. So what we are submitting, some of our own front matter that I shared with you, as well as the required pieces for the state. So this document is about 29 pages long. And again, pardon the repetition. I think it is important just so people who are at home and listening are really clear on, what's here, where it came from, and why. And so, as has been said multiple times, per the state of Connecticut, schools should plan to have all students in all districts return to schoolhouses for full-time instruction at the beginning of 2021, so long as public health data continues to support. So for us, we're looking at making sure we can implement health and safety measures for all students and staff, as Debbie was just describing. We're establishing many operational protocols. We are addressing the social and emotional well-being of our students and staff, and we are building or reinforcing our communication routines. So just to reiterate the broad practices and the mitigation strategies that we've discussed quite a bit. So in our schools, all students and staff will be required to wear face coverings while in the school buildings. And this, recommendations come from the CDC about who can't or shouldn't wear cloth face coverings. For our staff, we'll provide face coverings. We're inviting parents to provide face coverings for their children. We'll also have a supply of disposable masks on hand. A question came up yesterday about specifications around face coverings, and we'll work with our local health professionals to nail that down specifically and publish that. With respect to social distancing, we can achieve having teacher workstations 6 feet apart from the students, but student workstations across the district, the most that we could achieve uniformly is 3 feet apart. Desks will face the same direction, and then where tables are used, students will sit at opposite ends and we'll have a sneeze guard barrier in between. And then we'll also really focus on, to the best extent possible, grouping or cohorting students to minimize interaction with larger numbers of other students. We will have significant hand washing or hand sanitizing routines in place across the district. So all of our students and staff are required to wash and sanitize hands frequently. And this is not a comprehensive list, but upon arrival, after using restrooms, before and after meals, if a student, sneezes or coughs, prior to dismissal, and then, wherever else it's most appropriate. We're in the process of installing hand sanitizers in every classroom and across the district. We intend to follow the Department of Public Health guidance for the cleaning and disinfection of schools. And so we'll do that. That was the commentary about the need for additional custodians. And then, as we've already talked about, we are accommodating the requirement here for 3 separate learning plans: in person, hybrid, and remote. With respect to student grouping or student cohorting, what we'll be trying to do at the lower grades is group students by class. And so, cohorts, depending on the grade level, will be anywhere from 17, 18 to, 20, 21, 22, et cetera. The purpose here really is to try to minimize the number of people that students come in contact with over the course of the day. As I just said, we can do this more uniformly at the lower grades. It becomes more challenging at the upper grades and is virtually impossible at the high school. There's also, as we talked about last week, a requirement that allows parents and families to not participate or to temporarily not participate in the in-person learning program. And so, as you heard earlier on in the night, we are planning an instructional program that we believe will provide a very high quality experience for those students who are unable to participate in person. And then as part of that, as we discussed, we're also planning for all of those different eventualities that might have students in some time and out, other times. And so we're really trying to simplify our approach, but make it as fluid and flexible and meaningful as possible. We continue to work on our communication plan. So we have a number of policies that need to develop. We need to publish clearly all of those various expectations that we'll have about operations and logistics in the building. And then, we have infrastructure in place now that enables us to communicate broadly and quickly. So we have school messengers, our emergency communication system that allows us to communicate via text, email, and phone call. We have regular communications systems in place with newsletters and things like that. And then we have our website, which will continue to update. In terms of some of the big buckets of operational plans, because of the numbers of people who will be driving, we do have to stagger arrival and dismissal just to manage traffic flow. So we will have plans published about who's expected to arrive, in what window. We're working with our local police department to look at traffic logistics. So all of that's underway. Similarly, we've made the decision to start the year by having students eat their lunches in the classroom. We're working with Chartwells, and right now what we're planning to do is have Chartwells start the year and serve cold lunches. We think parents will be able to pre-order lunches, and that will make that work more efficient, and then we'll have plans in place to deliver those lunches to the classrooms. As we discussed, we're going to try to take advantage of the outdoors as much as possible, weather permitting. Thinking about, how and when we use outdoors, that raises a whole other host of logistical concerns and questions, big ones around student and staff safety. And so, again, we're going to work with our local police to look at potential areas where we could allow teachers and classes to be outside, and then how we can manage the physical safety of those students while they're out there. As I mentioned already, class sizes will be in that 2024 range, probably a little smaller at the lower schools. And then I'd mentioned earlier, we're working on acquiring additional furniture to manage the social distance needs in our classrooms. We have a company working with us right now on foot traffic flow. And so what that will look like is when students are dropped off either by car or bus, there'll be signs guiding them about where to enter, where to move. There'll be signs directing them to sanitize their hands as they're coming into the building. We'll have, in some cases, either staircases or hallways because of their width. That'll be one way to just help manage the flow of students around school buildings. We're working on our ventilation system. So we have contracted with a commissioning agent who has been in, again, examining all of our HVAC systems and ensuring that we have adequate amount of airflow and the right kinds of filters. We're erecting physical barriers in some of the larger spaces, and then we're looking at other portable and temporary physical barriers for classrooms. Another significant requirement here in the state plan is to create isolation rooms in each of the schools. So if a student is at school and develops symptoms or presents symptoms, we have to be able to isolate that student and then make arrangements for pickup. And there are specifications about ventilation in that isolation room as well as entrance egress. And so we're managing all of that. Developing plans to restrict the use of materials so students don't have to share materials. At this point, we're also not planning on using lockers. And as I mentioned a week ago, we continue to have to run our safety drills. So we're reviewing with our emergency operations teams the best way to do that. So that's a recap of what I presented last week. I think as part of this document, it's important to highlight a couple of things. And so, our staff is working very diligently, given all of the logistics and concerns and questions, to get our schools open. But I want to say to everyone in the community, we all have a shared responsibility in keeping them open. And what I mean by that is simply, we have really good guidance from the state of Connecticut, and this state has been exemplary comparatively in the implementation of that guidance. And so our community transmission rate numbers are really low. And that's a really, it's a wonderful indicator of what's happening here in Connecticut. But as a community, all of us, parents, students, other community members, we really need to continue to take those mitigation strategies seriously. We need to work together so we continue to reduce the spread, and I think thereby doing that will be able to keep schools open. So I think we laid out a week ago too, just what are the simple expectations that we'll have for everybody. So we will be requiring health checks of our kids. The culture change that we have to enact here is if people, whether it's students or staff, if they're not feeling well, even a little bit, they need to stay home. I'll call everyone's attention to a very recent change. It begins tomorrow. Governor Lamont has revised the executive order on quarantines. And so now executive order, I think it's, I don't know if it's 7II or BII, I gotta confirm that, provides that any individual traveling to Connecticut from such a state shall self-quarantine for a period of 14 days from the time of last contact with such affected state. So if people are traveling and they're traveling to one of those states on the advisory list, they have to quarantine for 14 days from the last time they were in that state. And so we're asking all of our parents and staff members too, to take a look at their plans and look at those plans in light of our school start calendar. Students, we talked about most of these things: face covering, social distance, quarantining. Staff members, it's the same. So now on to the specific requirements in the state plan. you know, a lot of this we've already talked about. So we have a plan for 3 models. You heard tonight about the some of the details of the reentry units. We are implementing Schoology as our learning management system. You know, we're designing an approach that we think is going to be flexible, and we'll also be gathering, you know, learning data so we can really target the kind of intervention our kids need. I spoke to you about the provision for temporarily choosing not to participate. The state issued guidance earlier today on that, and you know, honestly, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So, you know, I think our approach is better because we are considering all of those students who may not participate for not only a variety of reasons, but also for a variety of time periods. The state requires the identification of a school liaison, development of communication plans, and data collection. And so we've designated Maria Coleman as the school liaison. We are going to rely on our existing lines of communication. We have our website. I think all those pieces that we've talked about already are already in place and we'll continue to rely on. In terms of feedback, we continue to get letters in our general email boxes. We did create an additional email box. It's input@wiltonps.org. So it's right specifically to the district on a COVID or reopening related matter. They can access that mailbox. And then certainly, you know, all of our phone numbers and things are published online. You know this already, but we have 9 separate committees running that are working on these various aspects of reopening. So in terms of facilities, you know, some of those pieces we've talked about, I want to highlight and underscore, and I do so in the plan. So whoever at the State Department of Education is reading this understands very clearly that with all students returning, 6 feet of social distance is not achievable in our classrooms. There might be 2 classrooms at the high school where we could get that, but that's it across the district. And so we settled on 3 feet of social distance between the student workstations, and we settled on that number based on the guidance published by the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the guidance from the World Health Organization. I've shared with you, and I'll repeat it here because it bears repeating. I'm very concerned, especially in light of the study that was just released over the weekend from South Korea, that 3 feet of social distance in our high school may not be sufficient to really genuinely satisfy some of those safety and mitigation strategies. So I think we need to think differently about the high school and really think about the hybrid model. I think we have some similar, although they're not as deep, but we have some similar concerns about our middle school as well. We are in the process of identifying auxiliary classroom space because we'll need to have excess capacity should we need to clear a classroom because a child gets sick. We have plans in place to provide training videos for all of our staff and students and families around the various mitigation strategies we've discussed. We will have signs and messages clearly posted through the buildings. I think all of that is fairly clear. So in terms of daily operations, you know, again, we've discussed this, so this is just, you know, repeated here in the plan. But, you know, to the extent that we are able to, we will be cohorting kids in groups, and those are groups by classrooms for the most part. When you get into middle school and high school, there are facets of our program that limit the extent to which we can cohort at the middle school. And then I'm just saying it very directly, cohorting kids into high school is not possible. I think it's important, you know, Debbie wrote about phasing in various activities. And so, you know, what I'm proposing is that any club or activity that's in person, we phase in after the start of the school year. You know, if there are activities that can occur virtually and online, then I think those are probably okay to run right at the start. We are going to restrict non-school based activities from school buildings at the start of the school year. And then Continuing Ed has a plan for the childcare operations. Dolores sent that to me a day ago. Here with child nutrition, because we don't participate in the National School Lunch Program, we're not beholden to the same very long list of regulations and requirements, but working with Chartwells and our food services director, we will make sure that we're in compliance with all of the necessary guidelines, as well as our local health official guidelines. Transportation. So, this is repetitive. You see this information last week, but of the survey, about 26% of our families indicated that they would require the use of our school buses. The remaining 74% indicated that they could voluntarily transport their children to and from school. In the same way that we are sending out a supplemental follow-up survey to our faculty, we'll be sending out a follow-up survey to our families as well, just to nail down specifically, who will be participating in person, who will be participating remotely, and then who will be utilizing our buses and who will be driving. Just like in school, anyone who rides the bus, whether it's a driver or a student, will be required to wear masks. If we have, children who are in the same family, we'll allow them to sit together. The rest of the students will be spaced out so we can achieve social distancing. Just for your information, we presently operate 38 buses. 31 of those have a maximum capacity of 71 and have 25 seats. The other 7 have a maximum capacity of 83 and have 29 seats. So given the numbers, we think, we can probably have a single child to a seat and accommodate social distancing that way. This next piece on health practices and protocols is really speaks to the training requirements. And so this has been kind of noted here in multiple places in this plan. We will provide age-appropriate online training for all of our staff and students with all of the relevant safety protocols and mitigation strategies that we've been discussing. In terms of reporting illnesses and addressing vulnerable populations for our families, the school nurse will be the primary contact to report illness and to report COVID-19 related symptoms. For our staff, the Human Resources Department will be the primary contact. We will publish protocols for students, families, and staff that include steps for reporting symptoms, as well as reporting any known contact with a person who is diagnosed with COVID-19. So we've talked quite a bit about social distancing in the state requirement. They specify, some specific requirements around social distancing, which, we'll be able to do. We're also looking at some of the adults who don't necessarily instruct or work with kids. So, for example, some of the staff members in my office for the summer, we've cohorted staff. So some of us come in on alternating days as a way to practice social distancing. Where we've been able to assign remote work, we do so. If we have those opportunities for some of those staff members, that'll continue. We attempt to avoid commingling groups wherever we're able to. Again, these are lots of just good health, hygiene, social distance reminders, but encouraging staff to work in their own spaces. We'll continue to do all of those things. Again, lots of discussion here, but specified in this plan that's going through the state. So it goes without saying that we'll develop and adopt a policy requiring face coverings. And so some questions came up yesterday when we were meeting with the Goal 1 Reentry Committee. And, I think we'll have, a couple of different policy pieces here. One is, a blanket requirement for all who are able to wear masks will need to do so. We'll have to make particular provisions for those students who can't wear masks. And that's a concern. So I think this is going to be a concern everywhere. So we do need more state level guidance on that. So we can just be consistent in the establishment of protocols. But for those kids who really can't wear masks, we will look at those on a case-by-case basis. So I think, some of the strategies we talked about with regard to those kids was working with individual families to explore the use of alternative face coverings, maybe face shields or something else. We also will have to explore in those situations expanding social distancing in those spaces if we're able to, and perhaps adding additional physical barriers, again, just to enhance the safety for students who may not be able to wear masks. The other group, as I see it, are students or families who can wear a mask but may not want to wear a mask. And so we'll be drafting, a policy that says if you choose not to wear a mask, this is a health and safety concern. And so then you'll have to participate in the remote learning program. So we'll work on some policy language and have that ready for examination in the next several weeks. Again, anyone entering, visitors as they may be, will also be required to wear masks. We are looking to limit the number of visitors in every way possible, to our buildings. Per the state requirements, we do have a health monitoring plan and a containment plan. And so, we're requiring all, staff and students to self-monitor for observable illnesses, which include cough or respiratory distress. They'll need to confirm a temperature below 100. If folks are either tested positive or believe they're showing symptoms, or if they've had close contact, which is defined by the CDC, then they'll need to stay home. So we, take a minute and we list, the various symptoms here, as well as define close contact. We're requiring, everybody to self-monitor, and then we also spell out the new quarantine guidelines. The student self-monitoring protocols are exactly the same. So let me just move forward here to the next piece. We include, protocols. These are taken directly from the CDC. So, if you have COVID-19 or you suspect you have COVID-19, there's a series of steps you can take. And then, we have a protocol for returning to work. And so, that requires a quarantine of a minimum of 14 days. And in all of these, we continue to work very closely with Barry Bogle and our town health department. And so, Barry is reviewing these plans and is weighing in very strongly on all of these various pieces. He is a key partner here in all of this work. So the State Department of Ed also required the description of a containment plan. And so I'll just review this briefly for you. Right, so the purpose of the containment plan here really just stipulates an immediate response if an individual has signs or symptoms of COVID-19, or there is a known exposure, or a member of the school community has a confirmed diagnosis. So if a person has symptoms of COVID-19 or has a reason to believe he or she may have COVID-19, or the person was at a school facility 48 hours or less prior to developing symptoms, the following protocol will be implemented. The person must contact the school nurse if it's students, or the director of human resources if it's staff. We will handle all of the information with discretion and honor the confidentiality laws, rules, and guidance. The school nurse or director of human resources will immediately make contact with Barry Bogle, the Wilton Town Health Department. If it's a staff member, the staff member will be sent home immediately. If it's a student, the student will be moved to the isolation room, and then we'll make arrangements with family members for transportation home. We do have a response team, and so that response team will gather immediately just to review the facts and then to coordinate the response. The next step, if there's an exposure, would be to dismiss all staff and students in the building, and then to implement an initial shutdown period of at least 2 to 5 days. Right now, this is the guidance from the CDC. And so the purpose of that shutdown in the building is to investigate the extent of exposure, initiate the contact tracing, and then allow for a deep cleaning and disinfecting of the facility. As part of that process, we would certainly send emergency notification to our school community and to all of you regarding the potential exposure and the shutdown. And then we would transition to remote learning while school facilities are closed. We'll continue to not only stay in touch with the individual who's impacted, but also continue to work with the town health department. And then, publish information as necessary. So, State Department of Ed requires information for, how we'll, cancel classes, transition to remote learning, and then publish reopening plans. And then using the systems we have in place, we'll be able to achieve that with the guidance from the health director. The State Department of Health is supposed to issue some broad guidance around community transition rates that will help us determine district-wide if we should be in full-time in-person, the hybrid model or the full-time remote. And then, of course, we have to make our own judgment based on what we think we can do. So I've talked to you quite a bit about Schoology and the roles for Schoology. And then, as Debbie mentioned at the start here, so we have kind of generic descriptions of each of these three plans, and then we will, come back to the table and really describe in more detail, what those instructional models are going to look like. With respect to academics, here we're just making a statement of assurances about how we will continue our special education program. This is an area, right from the start that our special educators, under the direction of Andrea and team, have done a remarkable job. And so we can fully expect that they'll continue to do so.
Kevin, can I just interrupt? Go back to the hybrid model and telling us that, more details are coming, and I get that. So I just want to be clear for anyone listening that the hybrid learning, we do not have a schedule for that. And you're gonna be working on it, but we do not have one tonight to share. Am I right?
Thank you. No, you're absolutely right. And just so people understand kind of where we are, we don't have a model. And, there are two, as I've been reading and talking to, other superintendents around the state and looking at, what's happening across the country, there are two models that are emerging as, I think, the most popular models. So one is referred to as a 2-1-2 model. And in that construct, you have a cohort of students who are in, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, everybody is remote, and on that day, the building is deep cleaned. And then the second cohort is in person Thursday, Friday. And then the other model that seems to garner a lot of attention around the country is this alternating week model. So a cohort is in 1 week, and then the other cohort participates in remote learning for a week, and then they switch. So we're exploring those models, and in the coming days, we'll have a clear recommendation for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So, okay. So the last couple pieces here, just a lot of details, but the short of it is, we'll continue in the way that we have been to support our students who are on IEPs and 504 plans. Similarly, we'll have supports in place for all of our English language learners. So, those, at least broadly, those details are spelled out here. And then, as I think, we heard from Kim Zemo recently, we do have plans in place, and they continue to be developed to address the social and emotional learning and the mental health and family support when students return. And so we just lay out kind of the steps that we have taken or intend to take here. So we have teams in place. They're multidisciplinary teams, and as students come back and we learn about particular concerns, we'll obviously address those, as well as really prioritizing through the, beginning with the reentry units that you heard Trudy and Karen talk about a little bit, fostering some of that, classroom community that's so important for kids and teachers. And then the last piece here in terms of after school activities, kind of mentioned this already. We're going to start the year because we're going to need it with the childcare programs. We'll phase in as we're able to, other programs, but I think a phased approach makes the most sense. We don't really run a career and tech ed program, so we took the opportunity just to spell out some of our, protocols for, how we're going to clean and just manage some of our materials. The last piece here is on staffing and personnel. This is work that Maria had just updated you about a moment ago, and so we'll ensure that we're complying with all of our legal requirements and regulations. We'll be publishing, as Maria named, lots of information for our staff about their rights and the protocols we're putting in place with respect to COVID-19. And then Maria will be the the primary contact for folks. That's it. And so just to kind of recap all of this, you've heard kind of, my concerns and you've named them yourself about the high school, but, I think, for us, the two key pieces in making those determinations really are, the community transmission rate and then, our own understanding of our capacity to effectively implement those mitigation strategies. And as you, I think, understand pretty clearly now, those are different by school, and certainly the high school stands out. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you for the hundreds of hours of work that took, for you and your staff. And I want to appreciate, send a thank you out to the people who have been also sitting on the various committees. It's just monumental. I'm looking at the time, and so we need to discuss this, and I just, sort of want to get to the heart of it. Are there reactions from board members to the package, to the introduction, or are there any outstanding questions? We know there are lots of details that are to be determined, and Kevin, you can see them in the, you can see where he referred to those. Want to reiterate that whatever we decide tonight, it is not about a model or a scenario. It is saying, yes, we have 3 plans here, and we want the flexibility to decide site by site as it gets closer, based on health and safety, because we think there are different needs for different ages of kids. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, part of it, I mean, it really is exhaustive when you look at the plans that the committees and all the hard work they've done have put together. As I sit here and listen to all of it, there's a part of me that just says, the heck with it. Let's just reopen, bring the kids back. Everybody wears masks. We're clean as appropriate as is called for, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know. It is just so frustrating to try and figure out. There's so many unknowns and so many what ifs. It's mind-boggling. And I commend Kevin, your staff, everybody who's worked so hard to pull all this together. It's mind-boggling. It really is. And I don't know the state appreciates what a challenge it's going to be for each of the districts in the state to reopen and to try and do what we all want to do. And that's have the kids back in the classrooms, facing the teachers, interacting with each other, doing all the things that are important about being in school. I'm just flabbergasted. I really am. I'm sorry.
No, I think a lot of people share your feelings, Glenn. About the overwhelmed piece, and mind, just staggering. Other comments, questions?
Well, yeah, again, one other comment. It's interesting to note that we have more participants tonight in this meeting than we've had in our last, I don't know how many meetings. We have over 107 participants tonight. So clearly there's a high level of interest in the community about what we're doing, how we're progressing. We've gotten so many messages from so many parents. I mean, the interest level and the uncertainty that surrounds this community about what we're going to try and do, it's mind-boggling. I'm sorry. I'm just, I think Kevin and his staff have done a phenomenal job putting all this together, trying to deal with all the different issues that the state has laid out for us, the contradictory messages that we get from the state are like, what? And you're to be commended, Kevin, your entire staff, Maria, everybody for the amount of work, Fran, and what she's doing with Schoology. I'm convinced that we'll make it work. I'm convinced that we will do the best possible job that we can do with all the different considerations that we have. And I just commend the entire staff for the effort they're putting forth.
Yeah, and we're doing this very carefully and methodically and comprehensively. So again, it may lack speed sometimes, but it is better to be thoughtful and comprehensive than to rush through. And certainly, we certainly appreciate the input from the parents and community members. And people are anxious and invested and hopeful about the fall. So this is a huge step to just kind of get to this point with this many details and, for all three scenarios to have such good tools to think about what the resources that are needed to line that up. So I think given that it's July 23rd and as big a task as this is, that we are, again, we're making very good progress. We are not there yet. It is far from that, but we're making good progress. And we will find out the hybrid schedule next week. We'll find out more about cost. We'll be updated as soon. Maria, if you do your staff survey August 3rd, when do you think we need to hear more about that? Do you know what the timeline is for that?
So the timeline, the survey will be open for 1 week. And so I would be able to share out on it the following week, which would be the 13th of August.
Okay. All right. That certainly is cutting it close.
It is. I could probably share, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I could probably share preliminary results on the 6th because it'll be close to closed. And so I can share the preliminary results at that meeting and then share the final results at the following.
Okay. Do you think you could send it out before August 3rd?
Well, I can. One of the things that we talked about in our staffing committee was just the need to give, it would really be next week to send it out. So, we could certainly do that. It was just.
Okay, no, I get it. Yeah, I get it. And the other thing is, Kevin, am I right? The state will come forward more sort of guidance and pronouncements. What I think is, I understand the State Department. So again, it's hard for me to follow it, but I think all these plans from the districts get to the State Department tomorrow.
Correct.
And the state reviews them. I don't think they put a stamp of approval on them. I'm not sure how that works. But after the state review, there'll be some announcement more specific about what I think the State Department feels most or districts should do or would be able to do by school open. So they'll be more definitive. And I think that would come in the next couple of weeks. So Maria, maybe that's also why you need to kind of hold off on staff questions. And I think we've done our part here as a board by pushing back and saying, there's some limitations to some of our sites and we need to consider that carefully. So we will have the discussion next week more about the hybrid model and more about perhaps which model matches which site and see if we have some consensus around that. But for tonight, we need to approve the submission of the descriptions in this document, not because we're picking any one of them, but we think that it's a good work in progress. It satisfies the state requirement. The thinking that the staff has put into answering the questions makes a lot of sense, although we do not have a definitive model yet, and that's okay. So any further questions or comments, or are we ready to take action?
Deb, I just wanted to say one thing. I know Glenn was using a vigorous speech, but I don't think we throw in the towel and send everyone back to school. And I just want everyone to know we're being so thoughtful and strategic, and thank everyone in the community who sent emails. We really, truly read every single one of them. So I hope people keep them coming in. And some of them have great ideas that we hadn't thought of. So please keep those coming.
Well, Mandy, it was just my frustration at what we're trying to do.
Trust me.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's overwhelming. It really is. And I hope the community understands that the very first consideration we have, and it's been at the top of the list, is number one, is the health and safety of our kids and the students. And that being said, we've got to take that as the driver. No matter what we do, that's got to be the driving force.
And I think that has been, and that's in our intro letter as well. Yeah. So are there any other comments? Can we, is there a motion to approve submission of the document as presented by Dr. Smith with the intro letter from us, from the Board of Ed?
Yeah, so moved.
Thank you, Glenn. Second, Gretchen, thank you. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we are running over, so let us see if we can address the calendar very quickly. We've all had time to look at it. We are giving, well, Kevin, go ahead and summarize it, and then we'll see if we're ready to vote.
Quickly, I'll just share my screen one more time to recap what we're up to here and what we're proposing. So as you know, several weeks ago, the State Board of Ed had enabled districts to shorten the student instructional year by 3 days if those days were used for professional learning at the start of the semester. So what we're proposing to do is to make the 26th, 27th, and 28th half days, but half days only for a single grade level at a time. And so, for example, and I would just offer this as illustration only because the principals will make the final determination about which grades on which days. For the 26th, at Miller Driscoll, we could have pre-KK back, Sutter Mill grade 3, Middlebrook age 6, and the high school grade 9. And then, so those teachers would work with those kids on that half day, and then the rest of the instructional staff would use the time for professional learning. And then we would cycle through all of the grades over those 3 half days. And then all students would be back beginning August 31st. And then there are no other substantive changes beyond that. The breaks remain in place. The last day of school also remains unchanged.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I move acceptance of approval of the calendar as presented.
Okay, discussion? Jen, did you have a question?
I do have a question. Just to clarify, on a half day that our child goes, that's the only time that they're being instructed that week?
In that first half week of school, correct, yes.
So they go their half day and they're off. It's not like we're trying to do remote the other
No, no, because the teachers will be engaged in, planning and professional learning.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, it's been moved. Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mandy. All in favor? Aye. Raise your hand. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, that's been approved.
Are you going to send out I just think it's important we get this information out as soon as possible in every outlet possible. Are you going to send an email with all the updates?
And tomorrow. Yep.
All right, great. Okay, Kevin, while you were offline, we approved the Board of Ed meeting calendar.
Hey, a question there. I think there may be a typo because it has under F, future business and information items. The next meeting, tentative Thursday, July 20th, it said on the agenda. And that should be, I think, the 30th. Is that correct?
I believe
It got corrected because mine today said the 30th.
Oh, I did. Oh, I
Yeah,
put it on early.
yeah.
Okay, fine. Great.
All
Got
right,
it.
so I have, again, just tentatively, obviously, in the monumental task that we're all invested in, scheduled a meeting for every single Thursday. But
Right.
it's tentative. If there are weeks that Kevin does not, feels that there's not enough information to bring us together, then we won't. But I do think next Thursday is important because I think as much of the planning that we can get done now that takes board action, the better.
Yep.
And then we can get more into the implementation and the hiring and the communication and the orientations and trainings and all of that have to take place.
Yep.
So, it's getting into crunch time for the big decisions, and then we move into operation phase in August, early August. Okay, so any more comments from the public, Lucille? Do we lose Sue?
No, I just was making another check. No, there are no more public comments.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, having finished the agenda, it is 9:25. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, all staff members. Hope you can get some sleep tonight. Thank you, board members. And thanks again to the parents and the public who are so well with us. So thank you, everybody. Good night.
All right. Good night, Deb. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.